Welcome to the School of Transformation Live for Jesus podcast. We hope you enjoyed this class from the full-time School of Transformation.
How many images of Jesus you can find in the Old Testament? And that gets me to my first point was, often we approach salvation and the plan of Jesus coming as God's plan B. Like, he had a plan A, and we messed up that plan A, and then Jesus had to come, so that's plan B. But the plan for Jesus to come is so intentional. It's so profound, all of the ways that he explained it thousands of years before Jesus ever showed up. Is that there's so much intention in Jesus coming that I don't see it as his plan B. Right? Like, I think God in his infinite wisdom understood that once he gave mankind free will, like we like to blame Adam and Eve, like, way to go, you guys blew it for all the rest of us. But I guarantee that all of us being put in that situation would have blown it anyways. Right? So we come to the conundrum of God giving mankind free will, which is, again, a lovely argument to have with an atheist, right? And so God knew that with free will, we would screw up free will. We would fall to temptation. We would fall to sin. And my belief, and many other people's scholars, people a lot smarter than me, believe that in the story of creation, God had Jesus in mind from the very beginning. Like, Jesus was the solution to the inevitable problem of free will, and that his solution would always answer the problem that we have with evil. And we see that, like Shelley was saying, like we see that over and over and over again in the Old Testament. Foreshadowing, we see imagery, we see all kinds of things. Even Jesus in his early life, going to Egypt and then coming out of Egypt, being rescued from babies being murdered, just like Moses was rescued. And we just see the repeating patterns, and it's beyond coincidence, right? If it was one or two things, three or four things, maybe we could explain it away, but it's hundreds of things, hundreds of points of imagery and coincidence and stuff like that. And so that video left off with the promise of the one that was to come as given to the Israelites by Isaiah. And Isaiah, a little bit of Bible history, is one of the major prophets that speaking to the Israelites about 750 years before Jesus, and around there. And so he gives them this promise, this prophecy of the one that is to come, who's going to solve their problem, who's going to deal with the issue of atonement and sin and sacrifice. And so in Isaiah 52, verse 13, so Isaiah is giving the Israelites this prophecy of Jesus who is going to come. Right? And so at this point in their history, they are not prospering. They've gone through dispersion and captivity, and they've dealt with the consequences of their disobedience again and again, and they're in mourning. And so Isaiah says to them, "Behold, my servant will prosper, and he will be high and lifted up and greatly exalted. Just as many were astonished at you, my people, so his appearance was marred more than any man, and his form more than the sons of men. Thus he will sprinkle many nations. Kings will shut their mouths on account of him. For what had not been told them, they will see, and what they had not heard, they will understand. And so that first promise is pointing to the idea that this salvation is going to come to the whole world, right? The things that all the other nations of the earth thought were crazy, and the Israelites, those weird people in the desert over there, that God that fights for them and gives them things is going to fight for you as well and give you things as well, right? And then as chapter 53 starts, Isaiah just lays it out for them. Just the most incredible and detailed prophecy of what Jesus was coming to do and what was going to happen to him. And so chapter 53, verse 1, who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a root out of parched ground. He has no stately form or majesty that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we should be attracted to him. He was despised and forsaken of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and like one from whom men hid their face. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Surely our griefs he himself bore, and our sorrows he carried. Yet we ourselves esteemed him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was pierced through for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The chastening for our well-being fell upon him, and by his scourging we are healed. All of us, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way, but the Lord has caused the iniquity of all of us to fall on him. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that is silent before its shearers, so he did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. As for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living for the transgression of my people, to whom the stroke was due. His grave was assigned with wicked men, yet he was with a rich man in his death, because he had done no violence, nor was there any deceit in his mouth. But the Lord was pleased to crush him, putting him to grief. If he would render himself as a guilt offering, he will see his offspring. He will prolong his days, and good pleasure of the Lord will prosper in his hand as a result of the anguish of his soul. And he will see it and be satisfied. By his knowledge, the righteous one, my servant, will justify the many, as he will bear their iniquities. Therefore, I will allot him a portion with the great, and he will divide the booty with the strong, because he poured out himself to death and was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he himself bore the sin of many and interceded for the transgressors. And so what we see, and why this is important, is we see that God starts to put in motion this plan, right? He's had it in motion since the garden, but it keeps ramping up. Right, the imagery that we see in the garden, it ramps up. The imagery we see with Noah, it ramps up. The imagery we see with Abraham, it ramps up. The imagery we see with Moses, it ramps up. With David, it ramps up. With his prophets, it ramps up. To the point we get to Isaiah, and he's like, this is so clear, right? This is what I'm going to do to deal with your problem, right? And then finally, Jesus is born. He shows up. And his reception is not maybe what we think it should have been, right? And we think with the thousands upon thousands of years that that God has been planning to put this plan into motion, you think that, Jesus would show up with that army. He would show up with all that majesty, with all of that pomp of being someone righteous and special. But he doesn't. He's born in the most humble of circumstances, most inconspicuous arrival of anybody royal or anybody important. Right? He gets born in this forgotten corner of the world, in a manger, just totally obscure in the eyes of man. Obviously, in the eyes of heaven, it's different. The angels do come to speak to the shepherds and to the wise men. He's provided for, he's celebrated, but in the eyes of man, it's this completely insignificant circumstance, this insignificant arrival. Yet his arrival changes everything. And so reflecting back on that, John says in John chapter 1, right? He begins to kind of put into imagery, the significance of Jesus' coming and the unfolding of God's plan. And he mimics the words in Genesis. He puts them in the same sort of poetic structure so that we, as people now looking back at God's plan, can understand the connection, right? Can understand that although we've got all these chapters of the Old Testament and all the crazy things that happen in it, that this story of salvation is directly connected to God's story of creation, right? And so what he says in John 1:1 is, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And what he's doing there for us is he's giving Jesus one of his other names. He's creating this imagery like this man Jesus that came and was born in Bethlehem, right? This insignificant corner of the world was actually not just God's servant, was not just God's son, but was God. And he has been with God. He has been God since the very beginning of time. Nothing was made, he goes on. He was in the beginning with God. All things came to being through him, and apart from him, nothing came into being that has ever come into being. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. Right? What he's saying is, this God who created all things in the beginning, he was with God and he was God. Nothing has life that has life on this earth apart from the life that he gave it. Came to earth for us to be the solution to our darkness, and we did not comprehend it. We did not understand the light that came to us. Although, John goes on to explain it more, and Paul even more than John. Although we have all of these prophecies, although we have all of this imagery, although we have all of these promises that God gave us that this one would come, we did not comprehend it. We did not understand it. And that's where we enter the picture, right? We are not Old Testament Israelite believers. That's not who we are. Even if there's anybody Jewish in here, does anybody Jewish? No? Complete, full of Gentiles again, right? Even if we were Jewish, we are not Old Testament Israelites. We were born on this side of the cross. We are born on this side of God's story. And so the task that stands in front of us is to comprehend, to understand what this light that came into the world in the form of Jesus has accomplished for us. The light came into the world, it shone in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. Right? Are we going to comprehend? Are we going to understand what Jesus has done for us? And are we going to believe the crazy thing? Paul calls it foolishness in the world. God uses the foolishness of this world to confound the wise. This thing that is just crazy and unreasonable and outlandish on its surface is God's truth. It was the light of man coming to earth to be the solution to our problem. Are we going to comprehend it? Are we going to believe it? And are we going to trust it? All right? And that is the journey of salvation. Do you understand? Do you comprehend what God has done for you? And do you believe it? And do you trust it? Everything that we do moving forward this semester in the school is going to be built off of that question. Do you understand it? Do you believe it? And do you trust it? In Isaiah, it says, in the NSAB, it says it a little more Old English, but the way I've always read it in my past is, by his stripes we are healed. Right? Which means by his beating, the suffering that he endured before the cross and on the cross. Right? By what he went through, we are healed. Do you believe it? Do you trust it? Do you allow it to change you? I don't feel healed today. I'm still going through the consequences of my pain, the consequences of my sin, the consequences of my brokenness. I see brokenness all around me. But the light of the world has shone. It has come in the person of Jesus, and I am promised healing. That's where faith comes in. We are saved by grace, and that through faith. We're going to talk about that some more. All right? But what is faith? Faith is the evidence of things unseen. Sometimes we don't see our circumstances change overnight when we come to the revelation, the understanding, the comprehension of what Jesus has done for us. Does that change what he's done? No. The cross took place 2,000 some years ago, right? Somewhere around there. The cross took place. The atonement for our sins took place. The blood that we needed to cover us and cleanse us was spilt. It took place. Do we comprehend it? Do we understand it? Do we believe it? Do we trust it? And, again, we are in various different positions of that journey in this room. Some of us are way further along in this. Some of us are wrestling through way bigger circumstances, way bigger consequences, way bigger sufferings, way bigger theological comprehension problems, right? We are in different places. But are we willing to have that encounter with his truth? Are we willing to let that light shine on us? Are we willing to face the evil, the sin that we are guilty of, that has polluted our relationship, the relationship between me and him, and the relationship that I have with all of you? Am I willing to face it in the light of who Jesus was? To comprehend and understand why I need his cross, why I need his blood spilt for me, shed for me, what I need his forgiveness for, what I need his grace for, what I need his faith for. Am I willing to let that take place in my life? And so John goes on and he says, there came a man sent from God whose name was John, which is John the Baptist, not John the Apostle. Right? He came as a witness to testify about the light so that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but he came to testify about the light. There was the true light, which coming into the world enlightens every man. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. Right? And so John's making this point. It's like, although everything that exists only exists because Jesus was and is and will always be, because Jesus is God, the world should have seen him, should have comprehended the things that he was doing, the things that he was saying. Nobody had ever done those things before. Nobody had ever said those things before. They should have comprehended, but they did not. Right? And so John is leaving this warning for us. It's like, are you going to miss it? Right? This world that was created through Jesus missed him. This nation that claimed to be the children of God, the promised nation, God's possession, missed him. His light shone in the midst of their darkness, and they missed him. They did not have the encounter with the cross that they were intended to have. This plan of God that was in motion since creation began, he came and they missed it. Right? Are we going to miss it? You, the reader of this gospel, the Gospel of John, are you going to miss it? I'm about to tell you the story of Jesus and what he said and what he did. Are you gonna have an encounter with these words? Are you gonna have an encounter with this truth? Are you gonna have an encounter with the person, the living God, Jesus Christ, who is the atonement for your sin, is the solution to the problem that mankind has faced since the beginning? Are you going to encounter this Jesus for who he is, or are you going to miss it? So he goes on, and he says, he came to his own, and those who were his own did not receive him. There's Israel. But as many as received him, and to them he gave the right to become children of God. And that's one of my favorite verses in the Bible, but it's also one of the most challenging ones in the Bible. Because we like to fall into the temptation of believing that we're just owed to be a child of God. We just say it and it takes place. We just read it and the transformation of our hearts is owed to us. But that's not, from the very beginning of John's gospel, that's not what he's saying. What he says is, in verse 12, but as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God. Right? How did they receive him? They received him as the Word, as God, as the light that came into the darkness, the truth, the life. Right? To them who received him for who he was, had that encounter with him, had that encounter with the truth, had that encounter with the cross, it's to them that he gives the right to become the children of God. Everybody tracking so far? Any questions? All right. Even to those who believe in his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. Verse 14, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw his glory, glory as of the only begotten from the Father, full of grace and truth. John testified about him and cried out, saying, this was he of whom I said, he who comes after me has a higher rank than I, for he existed before me. For of his fullness we have all received, and grace upon grace. For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth were realized through Jesus Christ. No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son who was in the bosom of the Father, he has explained him. And that point is so important to what we're going to do over the next 5.5 months, 6 months, is when we say we want to read the Bible to find out who God is, right? What we're building off of is we're building off of John 1:18 here. Nobody has seen God except for Jesus. Nobody has comprehended who God is to his fullness except for Jesus. We, until Jesus came, didn't even have access to God except through that one priest who went in to service and commune with God but once a year, right? Now, we become that meeting place. We become that temple. We become the place where God interacts with the earth. And we get to meet with God, and we get to speak with him. But until Jesus came, nobody had that access. Now that Jesus came, are we going to fall into the same trap that all the Israelites fell into and all the other nations that rebelled against God? Are we going to do what is right in our own eyes, or are we going to submit to what he explains about God? Are we going to submit to the revealing of God that is given to us through Jesus Christ? Right? As John progresses through his gospel, he begins to show us what God expects of us. Show us the kind of relationship God wants to have with us. Show us the kind of righteousness that he wants us to walk in and live in. The power and the authority, the dominion that Adam and Eve lost, what that's supposed to look like for us now on this side of the cross. That dominion, that authority is restored to us through Jesus Christ. Are we going to walk in it? Are we going to operate in the identity of a child of God? Are we going to step into that right that Jesus gives us to those who have received him? Are we going to step into that right to be children of God, or are we going to miss it? Are we going to do what he asks us to do, or are we going to miss it? Are we going to operate in his covenant, the new covenant given to us in Jesus Christ, or are we going to miss it? Are we going to hear what he's asking us to do, obey it, and trust it? Or are we going to miss it? This is the encounter of salvation. It's this offer. It's placed in front of us. Over and over again, the apostles, they explain it in that way. This is my presentation of the gospel to you, the gospel I presented to you. Right? This is the gospel of Jesus Christ. And over again, it's an offer. It's an offer of something that we can take hold of. Right? Jesus, both John the Baptist and Jesus, they start their ministries with this phrase. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. What does that mean? It means the promise, the salvation, the gift of God is something that we can reach out and grab. It's something that we can possess for ourselves. But we have to participate in that reaching out. We have to reach forward and grab it and take it and believe it and trust it and apply it into our lives. We have to do that. We have to participate with God in this plan. And over again, we see that unfolding in the Gospels. We see that unfolding in the letter of the Apostles, is that choice. Are you going to have an encounter with the cross? Are you going to choose to let that light shine in your life? This little light of mine, right? Nobody lights a lamp and then hides it under a basket, right? Don't let Satan it out, right? The light of Jesus shining in your life, there's a requirement of responsibility, of choice, of grabbing, of applying, of obeying, of trusting that needs to take place. Right? And so Jesus gets up on that cross and is crucified. And his disciples scatter, totally confused. We think that the Old Testament is plain and obvious, that this was God's plan. Jesus made it even more plain and obvious. Over and over again, he says, hey, I'm going to die, but don't worry, on the third day I'm going to rise again. Right? He says it to the point where he says, the high priests and the Pharisees are going to seize me, and they're going to put me to death. Don't worry, though, I'm going to rise again. This is the Father's plan. He says it that point blank to them. I'm paraphrasing, but it's that point blank. He says it to them. And when they seize Jesus and they put him on that cross, all 11 of them go nuts. What's going on? This isn't our plan. This doesn't make sense to us. This isn't what I was expecting. Then they scatter, and he's left alone to die on that cross. His buddy John is a witness, but John, I guarantee, was just as confused as the rest of them. Right? I think he just wanted to stick it out and be the man that didn't. But Jesus is up on that cross, and he speaks out, testelestai. I can't say it today. Say it for me. Yeah, I'm tongue-tied today. But he's up there on that cross, and what that word means is three things. Right? You probably heard Steve say this. Maybe you've heard this somewhere else. But right, what that word means is that the debt is paid. Right, the sin debt that we've acquired. Right, sin. The payment for sin is death. Right, the debt is paid. It is finished. The sentence is served, right? And the enemy is defeated. But when he said that, he was a broken man hanging from a tree, blood pouring from every orifice of his body. We read it today, we hear it in church, we're like, yes, the enemy's defeated, the debt is paid, the sentence is served, yes. But the first witnesses of that statement were looking up and they saw a broken man on a tree. And they had a choice to make. Do I obey it? Do I trust it? Do I believe it? And I think there were varying degrees of success in that. I think the women did better than the men. Because most of the men went back to do what they were doing before Jesus. They scattered. They went back fishing. We know that Mary Magdalene and the women went back to serve at the tomb when they encountered the angel. All right. But he came back, and he was merciful, and he was kind. And he encountered each and every one of the 11. Right? He has this beautiful breakfast with Peter on the beach to redeem his denial of him. Right? Why? Because he was going to give each one of them the opportunity to respond to the encounter of the cross. They saw with their own eyes what they thought was defeat. And now they were presented, are you going to believe that this defeat is actually victory? Are you going to obey what I've said? Are you going to trust? Are you going to believe? And they, as far as we know, were wildly successful in obeying, trusting, and believing what he said. They wrote this book for us. They wrote down his words, his instructions. Paul, they invited him to add to it. They wrote their own letters explaining how to live it out. This salvation, this atonement, this purification of the blood of Jesus given to us. And what we're going to do is we're going to go after it. We're going to read all about it. We're going to challenge ourselves. We're going to look at some things that are crazy and wild and unexpected. And that's what we're going to have the opportunity to do. We're going to have the opportunity to obey, to trust, to believe, to apply, to walk in. And then we're going to have the opportunity to transform. Transform ourselves, our hearts, our minds, our lives. And then we're going to have the opportunity to transform the world around us. If we walk in that plan, if we walk in that obedience.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Live for Jesus podcast. If you are interested in the School of Transformation or have any questions, please visit sotlife.org.